What's up, Archons? I'm Flightless Pheasant, and today I'm going to be doing my KFC3 recap video where I'm going to go over my decks, and I'm going to go over my experience in a little more detail, and I've got some photos, and I've got some cool stuff that I'm going to put up, and hopefully we'll all have a really good time. I am going to make this a little bit more focused on the things that weren't in my daily recaps, so basically deck lists and photos. But I do want to go over the whole thing in a more like all-inclusive way, and so that's what this video is for. So we got to play at the Game Center in Roseville, Minnesota. It's a really cool place right across from Asmodee's headquarters. Day one's registration was kind of long, but we went through it at a pretty good clip, and we got ready to do the last chance qualifier to get the players who were going to be able to play in Worlds ready to do that. So as I said in my recap videos, I didn't know we were going to be, well, I did find out we were going to be playing Grim Reminders as the last chance qualifier before we actually played it. I did really poorly, and I felt like I had some bad pods, but according to Decks of Keyforge, one of the decks I opened should have been really good if I had just played it out of the pack, but the only pod I took out of this was the Mars pod. I wasn't really impressed by the Brobnar or Geistoid, even though it says here that they're both really solid. I only saw potential in the Mars pod, and even then, not a ton of potential. I mean, Double Fiery Jark is pretty good board control. Looter Goblin, I don't know. I'm not really sure. It says 2 Fiery Jarks and a Recklessness is solid, and I guess I'm not disagreeing with that, but it just didn't really look that good to me. And then the Geistoid pod here, it had Winds of Death and Junk Restorations and a Junk Restoration and a Poltergeistoid, but so did the other pod that I ended up playing. And the other pod I ended up playing also had a Boo, which could get me Haunted, which I really wanted. So I don't know. Maybe I should have just played this out of the pack. But I did take the Mars pod because it wasn't bad, and I managed to do some stuff with Zip the Implanter and Mars First. So I was able to abuse that a little bit, but it wasn't crazy degenerate or anything. So yeah, this is Dirty Galaxy Radamore. The other decks I opened were Diver Moreau. I took the Star Alliance out of this, and the Star Alliance pod was the one pod I felt really good about, and they don't seem to think it's very good. But I mean, I like Camaraderie. I couldn't pull it off very often, but it's worth an amber even if you don't. I like Psionic Officer Lang. 2 Quartermaster Bodies and 2 Retro Technician Lees is good if you can get Haunted, which is why I really wanted the Geistoid pod with Boo in it, so that I could potentially get Haunted a little bit faster. I did look at this Untamed pod for a little while because double Werewolf Curse, double Gnarl Gibbous sounded kind of fun. I don't know that it sounded good, and it seems like Decks of Keyforge seems to agree it probably wasn't good, but I thought about it for a while because, you know, I don't know, it could be kind of neat. But no, ultimately I took the Star Alliance pod from here. And then this is the last deck. This is Terra Mavra Vineyard Chronicler. And I took the Geistoid from here because I really wanted that Boo. Because I needed to get Haunted pretty badly. It did have a Cursed Tomb, but I was able to avoid the Cursed Tomb pretty completely. It also had an Ecto Charge, which the other pod didn't. But it still had the Poltergeistoids. No in here somewhere. I was actually wrong about that. But it does run the Winds of Death. I don't know. I thought it was alright. And then there's a Brobnar and Unfathomable pod here. It thinks this Unfathomable pod is really good. Almost entirely because it has a Brio. But, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not good at picking pods for Grim Reminders. But anyway, I picked my 3 pods. I played 3 games. I went 1 and 2. Ended up losing out, and we went into Second Amber, where I played a couple of games. And after that, it was time for the keynote presentation. And I've got some great pictures for that, so we're going to talk about those. So the keynote presentation had several highlights, but one of the first ones they talked about was organized play. Discovery is getting a special event, as well as we're going to be seeing a new summer event, the new store championships, a KFC next year, lots of really good stuff on the horizon. They also talked about that you can clone your decks now. This is a feature that they had been talking about wanting for a little over a year, and it is available now. You can absolutely do it. It's $24.99 to clone a deck, and when you clone a deck, you can get deck accolades put on it. So if the deck was used to participate in a Vault Tour at a certain level or went to KFC at a certain level, then you can get those accolades put on the side of your reprinted deck. And the last thing that was really big from the presentation was the Martian Civil War results. You can see here that the race was really tight between Rebels and Elders, but the Elders came out ahead, and since they did, Mars will be getting its first ever leader in the form of Emperor Memrox. And I really look forward to the lore blurb explaining exactly how that happened, and I'm hoping we get like an inauguration speech or something, because that would be really cool. The very last thing we did on Thursday was the Scrubs Revenge Party, which was hosted by Help from Future Self. It was a lot of fun. We were in the hotel, hanging out, playing Keyforge, pretty much all night for some of us. And yeah, it was just really great to see everybody come together and have a good time playing. Thank you so much, Help from Future Self, for hosting it. It was really, really awesome. I look forward to the next one. Day 2, we rolled into the open sealed event and the Tokens of Change event. As many of you know, this day went really well for me, but we're going to go through the decks so that you guys can take a closer look at everything that I was playing. So, for the open sealed event, I went 5-2 with a deck I was really proud of. I feel like it worked really, really well. And I pulled 2 of the pods for that deck from Ferdinanda Town Succubus. I pulled the Geistoid and the Mars pods. Both pods had some things I was really happy about. I had 2 Atomic Destabilizers, which went a really long way, particularly if I could put them onto a Bosch the Unyielding or onto a Scalawag Finn. Both of those were really, really good. I also got a little bit of use out of Haunting Deck. I got a lot of use out of In Here Somewhere. I got a lot of use out of Shard of Resurgence. Wellstring did some stuff. I would honestly say my Geistoid pod was probably my weakest pod, even though it had some decent recursion. I just was doing better things, I think, other than the Atomic Destabilizers. Those were awesome. And I took this Mars pod because it had a Nice to Greet You, which I thought was really nice. It had a Shard of Hate, which I didn't hate. It had Bartos the Ruiner, who I got pretty good use out of, because once I was in a Mars turn, I really kind of took a few Mars turns in a row. So my opponent pretty much had to deal with Bartos instead of dealing with my other stuff. And speaking of other stuff, I had 3 copies of Senwix the Bold. And combining that with Atomic Destabilizer, I was able to pile up a whole bunch of Amber onto my opponent's creatures, fight to kill them, or blow them up with direct damage, because I did have All Hands on Deck and Watney's Calculation, so just blowing them up with direct damage wasn't off the table. And I got a lot of value out of that. I got a lot of mileage out of that. Both pods played really, really well. I was very happy with both of them. I did not take this Brobnar pod because I didn't really see too much potential in it, and Shard of Strength is kind of not a great shard, particularly because over in Dangers of Camelomium Union, over in this deck, the Brobnar pod is a lot better. I like this Brobnar pod a lot. It's got kind of a low rating, but Cacophonous Riot, Clap of Thunder, Raise Your Glass, and where's he at? Where's my Fancy Donovan? And Fancy Donovan all let me ready and either fight or use creatures. Some of them out of house, some of them in house, which I got a lot of use out of. And Brunks and Bongle loves ready and fight or ready and use, and I was able to get a lot of uses out of that on Brunks and Bongle. I also had a Belcher that was nice because it let me move through my deck a little bit faster, and it meant that my Shard of Resurgence and my In Here Somewhere were more likely to be able to archive things so that I could keep my loops going. And the burst on this Brobnar turned out to be really incredible because of all that spontaneous ready and use, and a Smith as well, plus a Berserker Slam for a little bit of Amber control. Like, I was doing some pretty impressive things. I did stare at this Dispod several times to decide if I wanted it, because 3 Clipped Wings, a Mindfire, a Drumble, and a Vapor Imp and a Suspendamander. Like, it looked like that could maybe be good, but ultimately I decided that I wasn't really getting the synergy I wanted, and the Brobnar synergized a lot better, so I took the Brobnar pod. And then I didn't take anything out of this deck. This is Fabian, Healer of the Muscled Holdfast. this Dispod had Double Dance of Doom, a Clipped Wings, an Infinity Strop, 2 Serenes, and a Dust Imp with an Arise. It could have been good. It could have been really good, but I feel like I was already doing really good things. My Brobnar was already bursting pretty hard. My Mars was already bursting pretty hard. My Geistoid was giving me recursion and controlling my opponent's Amber accumulation. Like in one of my games, my opponent generated like 9 Amber in one turn, and because I had 2 Atomic Destabilizers on their Scalawag Fin, they lost all of it. It was really, really incredible. So, no, I'm very, very happy with how all of this played. And then when we went to Tokens of Change, I found a deck called Adam, the Boss of Bamdery that I loved. So for Tokens of Change, we didn't make Alliance Pods. It was just pick one of your 3 decks and play it. And I picked this one. And I picked this one almost entirely because its expected Amber is in the 99th percentile for Tokens of Change. And the reason for that is because it has 4 copies of Whimsical Conjurer with 11 natural Amber pips in the deck. So the Whimsical Conjurer's added 8 more for 19 total. It also had quite a bit of steel in it because it had 2 Even Ivans and a Citizen Shrix. So I was getting quite a bit of steel going in addition. I also got a lot of ability out of Lay Earl of Hurl, who I would just capture onto repeatedly and keep him off of the flank, which wasn't hard because there's so many creatures in this deck. Like, honestly, this deck was just really, really fast. It would just throw out Amber, just boom, 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 boom. And if you didn't have really good Amber control, it was really hard to deal with. And then I was also running a First or Last, which let me deal with Katina Fiends and Alpha Gammas. So, like, I was just really doing good stuff. I'm very, very happy with this deck. The other 2 decks that I barely looked at were Nemo, the Lance Corporal of Spying. I actually think this deck's pretty decent. It's got the Paragon token and a good redemption pod, so it can kind of get a redemption loop going. Yeah, I think this deck's actually pretty solid. I did get to play it on a different evening, and I thought it did all right. And then there was also Amina, Geneticist of the Hairy City-State. This deck I despise. It's not good. It has the Minion token, which is just not a good token, and comes with Suzerain, who's not that good either. It wants to get a Slipshot to be readied repeatedly by using Kerwallops with Cover Operation and Life for a Life and stuff like that. Like, it wants to just keep readying a Slipshot over and over again, but it's terrible at it because Minion is a 2-power token, which means it takes a lot to kill. I mean, not a lot, but more than that pod can really pull off. And the Untamed is okay, but not good. Like, yeah, I just don't like the deck. I don't think it really does very much that I'm happy with. The one area it excels in is artifact control, and I'm like, I don't really need it that badly. But ultimately, I loved Adam, and I went 3-0 with him. I really, really liked my alliance that I built for the open sealed tournament. I ended up losing to Harmed, but Harmed ended up winning the whole thing. So, hey, can't feel bad about that. Day 3 on Saturday was the open Archon and Open Alliance. I ended up playing Archon. I played a deck that I'm really proud of. I'm going to show you guys it. I've been playing it on Decks Keyforge, and I was talking about it a lot over the weekend, so I'm sure several of you have heard about it already, but we'll take a minute to go through and take a look at it. So this is Ragpart, the Immortal Badland Crony. I really, really like this deck. I think this deck is really solid, and you can see it's got a 119 SAS, which is the highest I've ever pulled by a considerable margin. Why is this deck so good? Well, starting with an Alpha Gamma token is pretty solid. When Alpha Gamma is destroyed, it archives itself, and it always comes with a Beta Forge. And this deck actually pulls off Beta Forge about a third of the time, which is really high considering that you have to pay like 18 Amber to pull off Beta Forge. Granted, -1 for each card in your archive, but still. The big reason this deck pulls it off, though, is because it has a lot of token creation in Logos, 2 Hypothesize, and a Cognitive Assumption. Additionally, it has 2 Archimedes and 2 Titan Guardians, which means it's really easy to put a Titan Guardian next to an Archimedes and then play Standardized Testing, which will usually kill all of the Alpha Gammas and one or more of the Titan Guardians who might be next to an Archimedes, and then they'll get archived. So I'll get a whole bunch of cards into my archive really suddenly, and then I'll play Knowledge is Power and generate a bunch of amber for each card that is in my archive, and then I use Beta Forge to forge a key instantly. That works a surprisingly large amount of the time. But the other two houses in this deck are also really solid, and they very much contribute. Like, the Logos has a 55, the Skyborn's a 34, and it thinks the Untamed is a 16, but I'm going to explain to you why the Untamed is so critical when we get there. But first, let's take a look at the Skyborn. 3 against all flags and 2 Black Tempests is hard to deal with, and I like to drop the Black Tempests early. And if I get into a loop where I'm taking Skyborn turns, having 2 Shikaris and a Captain Pella along with a Hunter of Legend means I'm probably generating Alpha Gammas the entire time, and when you finally deal with my Black Tempests, I can just go straight into Logos and benefit from all of those Alpha Gammas that I've been making. The Untamed has Amassing at Midnight, which I like with Alpha Gamma, but the bigger issues here are it's got a Key Frog with a Cooperative Hunting, and even though I can't really generate a ton of amber in Untamed, if I come off of a big Logos turn, having forged a key with Beta Forge, and then I forge a key at the start of my turn, I'm likely to still have enough amber left to forge another one if I can drop a Key Frog and play Cooperative Hunting. The other thing that's really nice here is a Molimok with a Draw Pip. It's my only artifact control, but I get it pretty reliably. And 2 Warfalines, which actually do a lot of work in this deck, since most of my really good things that don't go to my archive after I use them or aren't sitting on my board are actions. And so frequently I have no discard pile at all because I'll just play Warfaline, shuffle my good actions and good play effect creatures back into my deck. And actually I can get even more use out of them using a Song of Spring to shuffle them back into the deck as well. So all in all, this deck basically never has a discard. It's always got a really big deck to draw from, so I can always make lots of Alpha Gammas. It gets a big archive really easily, it profits from a big archive really easily, and it can put my opponent into a really hard position by just having a whole bunch of steal effects that are tough to deal with. Like, this deck is genuinely really, really strong, and I like it a lot. I think I'm going to be playing this at tournaments for Archon in the coming season. But what I did notice is that I'm weak to Empyrean Charge, and I'm pretty sure the deck that ended up winning the Open Archon tournament was using an Empyrean Charge. I just really have no counterplay for that, so if my opponent's playing Empyrean Charge, I'm pretty much just giving you a free key, and I can't really do anything about it. But I still think it's a great deck. Still think I'm going to play it, because I just like what it does, and I'm just, like, genuinely happy with it. But yeah, this is Ragpark the Immortal Badland Crony, and he's what I played, and I went 2-2 on Saturday using this deck. So Sunday was also a really fun day. I had a lot going on, but it was all casual stuff. It was just all like having a good time, hanging out stuff. I started it with the Shredder event, which was a really fun game of Shredder where we played 3 rounds. I ended up coming in 4th, and when everything was all said and done, we picked up all the shred pile and we threw it up all in the air. So that deck is gone forever, and I'm not going to show it to you because I don't have it. I don't expect to anymore, but there was a big old pile of shredded cards in the center of the floor when we were all done, and it was perfect. From Shredder, I went over to play a game of The Great Hunt with a couple of my buddies. I was playing with Chase and Nick, and we had a lot of fun. We ended up losing, but hey, you win some, you lose some. After that, there was a podcaster Q&A, which was really cool. It had a whole bunch of different podcasts up there who were all talking about why they podcast and what they do and how they're part of the community, and it was just really, really awesome, and I was so glad to be able to be there and talk to them and participate. And they were in this kind of small room, but there were a lot of people. We even had some people standing out in the hall. And then after that was the awards ceremony, and congratulations all the winners. In my Day 4 recap, I list everybody off, but I'm going to put everybody's picture up here so that you can see them all. And of course, the highlight of the whole awards ceremony was that Emperor Riku and Bamboo were respectively the winners of the Open Archon and the World Champ Archon, and that they had like a commitment ceremony on Friday, and it was just really cool to see Love in Keyforge blossom. So it was really awesome. And of course, the last thing on Sunday was the Meet the Ghosts Q&A. The Warcast Reforged did a really good recap of that, but I want to go over a couple of things, and also as a special thank you to everybody who watched this far into the video, I have a couple of surprises that I hope you're going to really like. But anyway, I asked them about Strataflight, just like I said I would, and just like I did in my recap video, I'll tell you what they told me, which is that it was an attempt to add a second battle line to the game. which was a very disappointing answer because I was really hoping that that it would be clear that that was probably not going to be viable from the jump. But apparently they did put a lot of effort into trying to make it work, and ultimately it didn't. There were several other really good things from that. Again, I would send you to the Warcast Reforged for their recap, and also my Day 4 recap when it was a little fresher in my brain. I went over some of those things in a little more detail. But I got a couple of surprises for you, and the first one is your first ever high-res look at my creator card. Bam! This boy right here. And in addition to that, I also spent a little bit of time and effort tooling around, and I think I made a better version of Strataflight that could actually work while still being thematically correct without requiring a second battle line. And bam! Here's a card I worked up to show it off. As you can see, my Strataflight is a keyword, and the way it works is it says each of this creature's non-Strataflight neighbors, or neighbors who do not have Strataflight, gain taunt, and this creature ignores taunt while fighting. And so it kind of simulates this idea that they're in a separate battle line fighting each other. I think it could really work. I think it's very simple compared to trying to create another battle line, and I think you still got all the flavor you want. But tell me what you think down in the comments, and tell me what you think about the entire recap. Did you make it to KFC? Did you not make it to KFC? Did you get to play with my creator card? Did you get a copy of it? What are you interested and excited about? I really love that I got to do this recap for you guys. We could go through the decks in a little more details. I could keep a couple of surprises right till the end to really kind of give you a little extra reward for watching what I know is probably going to be a slightly longer video. I've got more stuff on the horizon. Keep your eyes open. Keep them peeled, because we're going to be definitely doing more stuff. Thank you so much, Game Center. Thank you so much, Ghost Galaxy. It was a great event. I had a blast. If you weren't there, I feel bad. Also, we have the launch of the Gamefound for Prophetic Visions coming up soon. Be ready for that. I'm going to go live. There's going to be a live stream for that. But that's all I have for you today. So until next time, later, Archons.